Welcome back to My BrainWise Coach. I am one of your co-hosts, Bastian, and I'm joined by
the other co-host, Phil Dixon.
And we are so excited to be back with you for another week going on the exploration of neuroscience, our brains, and how all of that translates into how am I showing up each and every day and what might I want to do differently. So we're so glad that you continue to go along this journey with us. For our BrainWise friends that are in the US, particularly, we hope you had a fabulous Thanksgiving experience and that you got all the things that you wanted out of that time. And we look forward to the next couple of weeks. I know myself, I'm going to need to do a little bit of extra working out because I'd wear my stretchy pants on that Thursday and a couple of days after, because we certainly had a really wonderful time with our family that came up to join us for Thanksgiving. So, Phil, how was your Thanksgiving before we dive right in?
My Thanksgiving is always, quite frankly, interesting because I didn't grow up with the concept of Thanksgiving. It's always new for me. It's okay, what is expected? The very first Thanksgiving I had in America where we went around the table and expressed gratitude was a completely new experience for me. So it's not quite as embedded in me. It's not part of my, if we talk about mental models, it's not one of my mental models. I always enjoy cooking. I always enjoy great food, and it's always an example. But I do have to say, I think it's a very wonderful American celebration to actually spend time saying, let's be grateful and thankful for what we have.
Amen. Because I know I can speak from my own personal experience, the blessings that continue to come in. I just am blown away every day. So very grateful for all of that. Let's dive into our episode or conversation today, because Phil, last time we spoke about multiple characters, which I think our BrainWise friends just had a fabulous time listening to. And we decided we're actually going to do some more of that as we go along this journey, specifically around multiple characters, because we think there's so much relatability to it. We also announced our 5 contest winners. So congratulations again to those 5 winners. Your gift cards and the book is on the way. So be on the lookout for it. And today we're going to be going through, as we were planning what we wanted to talk about next, Phil has mentioned this 2-day workshop. He's mentioned some of the work that he's done in helping people identify what they want to do next. And so this is for anyone who may feel stuck, who may feel stagnant, who may feel change is encroaching on you, but you feel like, I don't know exactly what I might want to do as I move forward. And so we're going to be talking about, and this may turn into a couple of episodes, and maybe 1 and maybe 2. We are not exactly sure how this dialogue is going to flow because we're just going to let it flow naturally. And what we're going to actually do is I'm going to be a participant, and Phil's going to actually do some of this work with me in real time for you all to see live on camera in audio. And then we'll talk about how you might do some of that yourself. But it's really to help us identify where we are today, deal with some things that we might be experiencing in our current environment, and then really, what do we want for our future and how do we get there? So, Phil, let's dive into this extremely exciting conversation today. We'll start at the very beginning of this process. And let me just ask you, how would you define feeling stuck? Because it's going to be different for everyone.
It certainly is. For some people, it's, I don't know what's going to happen next. And a lot of people at the moment are facing that. It's a stressful time. It builds up angst. I just don't know. And I feel stuck. For some people, they're in the middle of the change and they don't know what's happening. They use the phrase, I feel stuck. For some people, it's I've been doing the same thing again and again. I don't seem to be able to get out of this rut. I feel stuck. For some people, it's I've moved jobs. I'm now doing a project manager in this next company, but I still don't think it's what I really want to be doing. So it can manifest itself in all sorts of ways. But helping yourself understand where you are in a transition process helps. And this is not mine. It's credited with a guy called William Bridges. William Bridges wrote a book probably 30 years ago now called 2 great books for anyone who wants to read them. One is called Transitions by William Bridges. And the other one is called Surviving Corporate Transitions, same author. And so both of those are very fundamental. But I'm going to try and give you the sort of the underlying premises in those books. And the one is you have a mental model, most people are saying, okay, a change occurs and I'm starting off. It doesn't happen that way. A change occurs when what we call a change trigger is pulled.
Mhm.
That can be all sorts of things. It can mean you had a divorce, or you got announced that you're having a baby, or that you've got a new boss, or that the company's broken and is going to fold, or whatever it might be. Those are a single event, and that event
Right.
is what we call a change trigger. That means what was going on in your past has now ended,
Right.
and you've got something new to look forward to, or otherwise.
Right.
Those are what we call endings. So that part of your life ended.
And it can be because as I'm hearing those descriptions, those are large transitions, but I also think it can be even to some degree. We're going to run for city council, and that's a change for me and for my spouse. May not be significant, and I'm changing jobs or I'm doing, but my life for the next 6 to 8 weeks is going to look very different than it did before. And then if we win, right, then that's going to look even more different for
Yeah.
4 years. So there is, I think, even changes like that can be a part of this dialogue.
Yeah. And those changes can be things that you intended, you made a choice to do, like I
Right.
resigned yesterday, or they can be things that are thrust upon you. And
Mhm.
so those are, whatever they are, they're change triggers. Now we have this idea that therefore that something new is going to happen, but it doesn't happen.
Right.
What happens is we're not used to the future yet. We haven't quite got our arms around what it is, how we're going to behave, what we have to do, what our routines are going to be. Are we going to be living in the same place? All of those things that have been thrown up in the air. So you've got the endings happening, but you don't have the definition of what that new beginning will look like. Well, there's a period in between, and Bridges calls it the neutral zone. And so we've got endings that happen, the neutral zone, and then these new beginnings once everything becomes clear. In the middle of that,
I would describe it as uncertain zone.
it's for some people, it's uncertain. For some people,
Mhm.
it's where they feel stuck. It's also been called the tar pit. It's been called the
Right.
wilderness. But it also turns out it's a period of time for great creativity and inventiveness
Mhm.
because it gives you a mental excuse to throw away the past and reinvent the future. Does that make
I love it.
sense? And
Totally
so
makes. You're describing my life right now, Phil.
you can spend that time saying, what is it I want it to look like?
Mhm.
I've either been put into this position or I've chosen to be in this position where I've got an opportunity to take stock and look back. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
It's a generic question about the world in general, not about coal.
Okay.
How long do you think the average person takes in planning their next vacation?
From observation, 2, 3 days, maybe not total days in a row, but probably over a course of a couple of weeks or something, but the equivalent to that amount of time.
Yeah. And so, for example, I'm planning a vacation next May to meet up with all my sisters, and we're all going to be in one place for the first time in probably 25 years.
Wow.
And so I've already probably spent 3, 4, 5 days on planning that, researching what we're going to do, booking hotels, etc. Let me ask you another question.
Okay.
How long do you think most people take in planning their lives?
Probably, I would assume it's not very, based off observation, it's not much. They experience life as it happens versus putting plans in place. Now, there is a caveat I want to share personally when we're ready to get there. But that's what I would say from the general population, it's probably less than that, maybe a couple hours in total. Some people do vision boards each year, but that might take 3 or 4 hours, and that's for the whole next year versus a 2 week or 5 day period that they take 4 days to plan.
Yeah. So let's just look at the logic of that. I'm going to take a 2 week vacation and I spend 4 days on it,
Right.
right? I'm got another, whatever it is, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of my life, and I might spend 2 hours thinking about it. We've got
Mhm.
something slightly out of whack. And so what I thought about this probably 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and said, what if we need to do something different? I wrote a self published book back then called Perfecting Your Life. What is it you want to do next? And so that's really the fundamental model, if you like, or the map. I prefer to call it a transition map of how do we think about what happens next.
I love it. It's interesting because personally, I feel, and I probably fall into that context of planning vacations more in some instances, but I think in the last decade, I mean, my whole life, you ask my mom or anyone who's known me for any long period of time, every day of my life, every year is planned. I've always had this plan. I've always known I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that next, and then I'm going to go here, I'm going to do this. And I don't like it when things are not planned. But then when it comes to vacations, it's probably a bit more whimsical in nature. I make the decision, we're going to this place, we're going to stay here. And I think the general comes in, which is so fascinating as we talk about this, Phil, because I'm remembering like planning vacations with my husband. What I need to do is take time enjoying the experience of planning the vacation versus it being this, okay, let's be efficient about it. Cause I'm sure when Joey listens to this, he'll be like, oh my gosh, that's definitely cool. The general's there because, all right, we're going here. Let's pick the place. Let's pick what we're going to do because we have other things to, to move on to. There's always something else I want to plan or move on or talk about. Whereas I need to focus on really enjoying the moment. So
Yeah.
very fast. I just wanted to share that anecdote because it's just something I'm listening to and I'm learning about myself.
And I'll show you something else. I knew a lady, she was actually my assistant for many years. And she had been a travel agent, as had her mother. And one time they both decided they were going to go on vacation together. And being a travel agent, they both had their general characteristic, i.e., we're organized, this way we're going to do it. And they both had it. So there were two generals going on vacation together.
Jeez.
And apparently the first 3 or 4 days was hell.
I can only imagine.
And so they came up with a unique solution. And I share this with everybody. They decided what they would do every morning. They would turn around and say, which one of us is going to be the designated thinker today? Which allowed the other one to completely relax and go along for the ride. And it's almost like it reminded me of when you were talking about that of the, hey, when can you let the general not have to lead the army?
A lot of times what I'm learning is, especially for me as Joey and I, making sure when we're planning, he is very much about enjoying the moment, enjoying the experience. And it's one of the many reasons I love him. But he helps remind me of that, where we can enjoy the experience of searching for the place to stay. We can enjoy the experience of looking for what to do and building the anticipation versus where my general would come out and say, is this an efficient use of time? It is, because it's connecting with my husband. I just have to remind myself of that consciously. But I didn't mean to take us on another tangent, but I think that was really fascinating as we were talking about it. So let's go back to our conversation around being stuck or being in the moment.
But before we do that, I want to point out how that efficiency tends to get manifested these days. And it's through this.
Oh, totally.
Go to any sort of reasonable place where people want to go and visit, and everyone is seeing they're taking this rather than experiencing the moment. And now, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's not the only way to be there. Get the experience. So you got a memory when you get back, but now put it to one side and enjoy what's going on. Experience it in real time as opposed to in retrospect.
100%. And that's where I think I help with Joey sometimes, is because I'm not a picture taker. One, I don't like having my picture taken. That's number one. But number two, when we're there, I'd rather have the one-on-one time together. I'm less worried about taking pictures and all of that. And so we were able to really balance each other out. So anyways, I love it. 100%. Enjoy the experience, enjoy the moments, because they're so fleeting. But let's get back to, we're feeling stuck, we're feeling uncertain, we're in the wilderness. What do we do next, and what's a process? And I'm going to be actually a real life example and demonstration for people as we go along this.
If you were sitting in my office with me right now, we would unroll a map on the wall.
Okay.
And the map would have 6 main components to it. And it would have a map or a box. What is your future? What do you want it to be? Both in terms of what do you want to do, which is a left brain activity, and how do you want to show up? And what are the characteristics that you want to display, which is more of a right brain activity? So we would actually have those discussions.
Yeah.
We can come back to how to have those discussions in a moment, right? Then the next thing to do is to explore who you are today. And that is, what are your strengths? What are your characteristics? What are your mental models? A whole bunch of things about you, what you've got today, your skill sets, your qualities, your values. We can develop a really rich description of where that is. And then you can look back and go over here, which of those qualities, values, things I do, strengths I have are actually going to be useful to me in the future? Or are there a few I want to let go of or change or do something different with? And that strikes me as another point in here. And this is why I look at things from a brain basis. Our brains aren't very good at focusing on the future, because what will happen is it will cause you to think about something in the present. And thinking about something in the present will cause you to think about something you need to do about it. All right. Which takes us to the third part of it, which is, what is your pathway moving forward? What are the things that you need to do?
Right.
So those are the first three components: future, present, and the pathway forward. Each of those requires a fairly in-depth conversation. When we have a discussion about the pathway forward, what often will happen is, and we've seen this happen many times, people actually don't know what the first step is that they need to take. Do I jump off that cliff? How do I do this? So we tend to go into an initial experimental stage where we'll try a few things. Right. That's perfectly okay. You don't go out and hit par golf the first time you go and play golf. You have to go and practice. It's the same thing with life. You've got to go out, experiment, do a little bit of practice. Okay, so we've got those three things there. Yep. Now, we've talked about this already in terms of the neuroscience. A lot of what we are today is driven by our past. So we're going to have to go back and look at those elements that have happened to us in the past, which cast a shadow over our current situation and anything we're likely to do in the future and how we're going to get there. Right. So that's the fourth element of the past. And again, when we're thinking about it, when we're talking about it, it doesn't happen it's in blocks and sequence and one after another. It tends to happen that we bounce back and forth. That's fine. We'll record it as we go. All right. So now that's your overall plan. And in fact, if you go into most MBAs, I have to think about this again. If you go and study an MBA, that's exactly what they tell you. Future state, current state, and how to get there, path. But there's a couple of other things that most MBAs miss. And that number one is, do you have the willpower to actually do it? And whether you call it willpower or discipline or backbone or whatever it might be, do you actually have the courage to say, yes, that's the pathway I'm going to take? So that's a fifth component. And then last of all is, no man is an island, or no woman is an island, whatever you want to say. We need the outside world, and we need support from the outside. And whether that's support in terms of getting a qualification, or going and studying something, or having an explicit help, like a coach or a therapist or whatever it might be.
Just going to say that.
So that's that. So we've now got 6 components: the future, the present, the pathway, the past. I'll call it discipline and
resolve.
And resolve is another way of putting it. Yes. And support. So part of our overall transition map is going to be developing aspects in each of those areas.
Right.
Now, last week we did the podcast on multiple characters, right? One of the multiple characters exercise sits right in the who you are today.
Right.
So who's on your team that you are going to be moving forward with? And who are those characters that you want to show up more in the future? And who are those that you actually would like to show up slightly less in the future? So that's an example of how you link some of these more focused episodes into this overall map. I'll throw 2 or 3 other just comments in that I tend to look for when I'm working with people. And one is that future might be rich and compelling, but you can't get there in one go. So if you talk about that as the next volume of your series of books, there may be a next chapter you're going to try and have to write.
Right.
And so it's
Mm.
slightly more focused. It's an interim step. It's a milestone on the way, whatever you might want to call it. But sometimes we have to hold that future as the
Mm.
North Star and then
Right.
look for something more concrete in the shorter term. The
Right.
second thing is sometimes, especially if somebody is what I'll call barrier driven, that they immediately think of what is going to get in the way. And we can't change people's brains for not thinking that. So actually having a construct by which you can actually turn around and say, yes, these are the barriers, and what are we going to do to get over them? And then
Right.
the last thing I'll say, and I think we've talked about this in the past, is if something drastic has happened in the recent past, that's actually going to have a greater shadow and influence your thinking about what you might want to do next. You've probably heard the phrase is when you're in an emotional state, don't plan to do anything particular. If you just got fired from your job, if you just lost a significant other, then just recognize that's going to have your thinking, that part of it's going to be magnified in your current thinking.
Then you need to take the time to grieve. We've talked about this before, but you need to take the time to grieve the loss of whatever it might be, because being able to move forward, right, and being able to plan your future or look at the pathway to get there or how I want to show up, a lot of that is you're going to be unable to do some of that in a real effective way unless you take the time to grieve and take the time to say goodbye to whatever it might be. Then you're going to be ready to actually have the next part of the dialogue.
So that's the overall map. As I said, I've typically in the past printed these things out on 6 foot by 4 foot vinyl sheets, and we actually fill in words and this, that, and the other. Nowadays, we're doing this more online. And so we will use a number of tools. I mentioned the multiple characters tools. We've got in my tool bag, there's probably 200 more of those.
So, Phil, one of the things we've been talking about so far in our episode is really around this thing we'll call the transition map. And for anyone who's interested, we'll certainly share a copy of kind of what a visual looks like for you. But let's do the first activity that someone or exercise or tool that you would use with someone who is maybe feeling uncertain or feeling stuck or in the wilderness. And let's do it with me. I'll actually be the live participant, and then we'll take a moment to describe how one would do it themselves in their own life. Because as our BrainWise friends know, I'm in the midst of a transition. I just am leaving a 7-year career with a particular company and that I'm choosing to leave on my terms. And I'm in the midst of what we call an independent contractor phase and haven't yet determined what those next steps are for my career. What am I doing next? Where am I going? So I don't describe it as being stuck, but I describe it as uncertain. So why don't we get us started off?
That's great. And I'm just going to give a couple of caveats. Number one is this doesn't happen in a 5-minute conversation. What happens is we trigger off a thinking process in a 5-minute conversation, and then your brain will start, especially your non-conscious brain, working on it over time, and you'll be coming up with ideas. My first recommendation is either do what I have by my side at all times a journal. I've had one with me for 25 years. Not the same journal. I filled it out.
Say it's
Not much.
Knowing you have many of them.
I do have many of them. But my recommendation is to get a journal, and so you can take it with you, because our brains don't think of everything in the perfect way possible. So you're going to come up with ideas at various points in time. So get yourself a journal, take it with you, with a pen as well, and just record it. It's actually better to do that than it is to record it on a computer, because we don't know exactly why, but our brains treat things we write down and we remember them better than when we put them in a computer. So that's my first caveat. The second thing is it never goes the same discussion with everybody, because people are different. Something will come up and they go, oh, what about something that happened in the past? And my job as a coach is to go with whatever's going on with that person's brain at the time. So I'm going to take us through the sort of ideal way of going through a map. It very rarely happens that way. So,
totally. And really, we're doing this, Phil, so that one, people will see a live demo, so they see it played out in real life with me. But then two, as you're going through this experience for our BrainWise friends, if you're going through something and you want to use these tools, use them based off what resonates most with you. So if you hear us going through a particular exercise, you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. And then it triggers off something else. One, you can always email us and ask us questions, but this is your opportunity, I think, or our opportunity to help, ourselves be able to go, this is where I might want to go, or this is what makes sense to me. And so these are all tools that our BrainWise friends can start to use in their own particular experience.
Exactly. So my first question to you would be, do you know your purpose in life? And if you know it, that's great. Some people know what their purpose in life was when they were 4 or 5 years old. If we were able to go and talk to Mozart, it would be fascinating. When did he first know that was what his life was going to look like? Some of us aren't as well blessed with knowing what their purpose is in life. And so one of the conversations we'd have, if you didn't know, would be, what might it be? What are the aspects? What are the attributes? If you can't write it down, can you write some of the things that you know it would be part of it?
Well, a little bit of that. So ask me a couple of those questions and I'll describe it as I know it today.
So describe it. Give me 5 bullet points or words on how you would sum it up today.
People or human focused.
Great.
Positive. Impact. Compassionate. And the word it comes to mind is helpful, but it's like, how can I help? I want to be able to help people.
Right. So summing it up, as I hear it, is your purpose is helping people.
My kind of description has been, and I've known this for my whole life, but certainly have more encapsulated it lately, is I want to have the most positive impact on those I have the blessing of being in contact with, whether it's directly or indirectly, that I'm able to do.
Great. And you've obviously summed that up. How long do you think it took you to come up with that summary?
To be able to put it into words, it's probably been a couple of years of experiencing it, or I had to think back on my last couple of years to sum it up. But I think innately, I always knew I wanted to have a positive impact on people. I didn't realize, though, it could be direct or indirect.
Yeah. And so, again, for our BrainWise friends here, this is not something that happens in a matter of minutes or hours. It can take a long while. And that's not a worry. It's you're normal if it takes you a while. It's the unusual people that already have that sewn up at a very early age. Let's assume that you're not one of those lucky people that what I say is, hey, if you already got your purpose, go forward and write it large. So, for the rest of us, we have to work on it and find out. And the other thing is, it's not one and done. It's not, yes, this is my purpose. So for some people, let's take and if we can, a typical married couple. They have 2.2 kids. I always want to see what's 0.2 of a kid look like.
Right.
Right. But so let's just go with 2. And their purpose might be to produce 2 wonderful adults that are great additions to the human race. That's their purpose. Once the kids have flown the nest, 21, 22, whatever it might be, maybe there's a new purpose. It may be to give back to their community. Who knows? So these are just things to start thinking about where you are in your phase of life. I'm 75, and I know my purpose now is to help as many people as I possibly can understand their brains in order to get themselves and other people a better life. That's my purpose, and I know that's probably going to be the remainder until I'm no longer around. And I'm good with
Which we hope is a long, long, long time.
We'll see. But something over which I don't have a lot of control.
Correct.
But if you're interested in exploring your purpose, then I've thrown a few things out there. And again, if anybody wants, we've got most of this written up. So if anybody says, hey, can you give me the document on blah, 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 contact us and we will do our very best. Can't promise, but we will do our very best to send you something that will help out. Just again, I know that you know about this, but there's a thing called the Ikigai. And it's Ikigai. Ikigai. I think that's how we spell it. And it consists of 4 components. And it's actually like a For those of you who know what a Venn diagram looks like, we tend to write it as a Venn diagram. And it asks 4 things. Number 1, what do you love doing? Number 2, what are you good at? Number 3 is, what does society or your community or your company want? And number 4 is, what will they pay for? All right, so that's the overlap of the 4, because you do need to earn a living. You do need to have a market for your services, but you also want to make certain that you're doing something you love and something you become good at. And in each of those areas, there's overlap, right? So if you love something, but you're not good at it, that's a learning opportunity. That's a growth opportunity. And so where all 4 of those overlap, something you love, something you're good at, something that the community needs, and something they'll pay for, that's your sweet spot. That's your Ikigai. So let's go back. Yeah. What do you think are your top, if we were writing this out, we would probably identify 10 things you're good at. But off the top of your head, what do you think are those 5 things that you're really good at?
I'm an excellent communicator.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Strategist, compassionate, synthesizer, creative, helpful. I don't know if that's something I'm good at, but I don't know if it is a strength, but it is. It's something I really want. I want to help people. So yeah, those are the ones I would say off the top of my head.
Yeah. And for our BrainWise listeners who might decide to take this exercise and flesh it out, we actually do have a list of skills and things you're good at. But if you don't know, ask some close friends, spouse, family. They'll actually have as good a picture of what it is you are. And then there are formal assessments that you can go, which will help you in that thinking process. So that's the first thing. What are you good at? All right. What's the next thing? What do you love doing?
I love helping people. There's no doubt. That's probably number 1. Number 2, I love being a spouse, a family, a friend, all of that. I love helping. I love strategy, helping people plan things out, helping companies plan things out. I love thinking of this is where you want to go, helping, all of that. And then really helping people realize, how do you get from here to there? I love to bake. So we're talking about hobbies. Yeah, my hobbies. My hobby is I enjoy baking. I'm not really sure there's a market for it because there's a lot of bakers in the world, but let's see. I enjoy being creative and being able to think of abstract concepts and how do they all connect and make sense for people. So those are probably the things I enjoy.
Yeah. All right. So now, of those things, what do you think the community needs? And when I say community, it could be your local geographic community. It could be a political community. It could be a church community. It could be if you're in business, it could be your business. It could be your family. It doesn't matter what you define as community. What is it that you are going to offer into the business world? We call it your marketplace.
So I probably have 2 categories of communities. One is my personal, local church community. And then the other would be the business, organizational company community. So I'll start with the personal church community. They need someone who can help with strategy and think about how are we going to get what we want done, accomplished? How are we going to best help the kingdom? So that's all that strategy part of my brain coming out. Synthesizer, putting people in the right places. And then my desire to help people. So being one of those that actually goes out into the community and helps to help other people and spread the word. So that would be that community. And I think then on the organizational side, it's similar, some context where they need the strategist. They need my ability to synthesize things and bring. Another strength I would say is recognizing strengths, the connectedness, where I can see how everyone plays a certain part and I can bring those people together to play their part. So I'd say those 3 things are probably the most marketable skills that I have, which is a strategist, a synthesizer, and a connector.
Yeah. And so you did a great...
communicator. Sorry.
And so you did a great job at illustrating how our brains work. You may not have known you were doing it, but you were starting to talk about your marketplace, and it triggered off another strength you had. That's the way our brains work. So for our BrainWise listeners, if you're choosing to do this, some people worry about trying to compartmentalize and get it all correct and finished and done in one. That's not the way our brains work. Our brains jump around all over the place, go with the flow. It's a lot easier.
Yeah.
And that's why it's much easier to actually have it written down. In this case, we're recording it. And of all those things that we've talked about, so what's your community going to pay for? And when I say pay, I don't mean necessarily just in dollars or pounds, shillings, and pence. Oops, that's an old phraseology. Pounds and pence or something like that. But in terms of resource, are they going to give you their mental share of mind or whatever the currency is for what you are offering? Are they going to listen to you?
Yeah, I think in my church or personal community, the strategist part is probably the one, because that's one of my greatest strengths, I think. And then my desire to help people. And then they will certainly give me the time and the space to exercise those skills and those strengths. On the organizational side, from the point of making a financial income, companies are looking for great strategists, great connectors, great communicators, and great synthesizers.
Yeah. So, if we were planning your future, if we turn around and say, for Cole, you are in the field of L&D,
right?
But those characteristics you just described are not restricted to the field of L&D.
Right.
If we were talking about a longer-term career change, perhaps, then you turn around and say, okay, maybe I can do things differently. I had several long-term career changes. I was in IT for the first, whatever it was, 15, 16 years of my career. And I then changed to learning and development. And it's because it was a very similar set of characteristics that were required. Right. So again, if we're starting talking about long-term, talking about the characteristics, the attributes and things that you possess are not necessarily those that are going to say yes, and therefore you've got to stay where you are. I think there's a movie called The Knight's Tale. And I think at the very beginning, the peasant talks to his young son and says, a man may change his destiny. And so that's what we're talking about here, is what is you want your destiny to be. Okay.
Yeah. So I think recap, I'm just going to recap those questions for our BrainWise friends. One, it's what do you love, or what are your strengths? Two is what are your hobbies? I think that's my layman's terms or my interpretation, my strengths, my hobbies. The third was, what does your community need from you? And then four, what are they willing to pay for in terms of social capital, actual money, time, thinking time, whatever it might be.
And it's slightly bigger than hobbies. It's what are you good at?
Right. So your strength.
And so it's your strengths. So what do you love doing? What is your strengths? And for anybody who wants to, just go out on Google or use the AI model of your choice and just ask about Ikigai. And it will repeat most of these questions we've talked about.
Absolutely. All right. So Phil, let's go on to, after I've now identified, I know a bit about my purpose. I know where would you take me next? What would be the next one that we would talk about?
We do what I call the pictures exercise.
Okay, let's do it I'll be very imaginative. Good thing my brain thinks in that way. So we'll do that even without the pictures, but let's try that out.
Right. And so what it would be is let me tell you what I used to do. I would have a big box that was like 2 foot by 1 foot by 6 inches deep. And I would have I spent 10, 15 years, whatever, cutting out pictures from magazines and all sorts of things. And I'd finish up with probably 1,000 pictures in that box. And I give it to the person and say, I want you to go through these and pick them out sort of one by one, take a look at them and see whether they resonate about what it is that they describe about your future. And pick 25, 30, doesn't matter the exact number, but that's probably a good upper limit. And then once you've picked those 30 out, and it takes probably 20 minutes, something like that, I pull those pictures together and say one by one, what does it mean to you about the future? That picture, why did you select it? What resonated with you? And give me a description of where you want to integrate it into your future. And that's what we do. And then I'd listen back. And what I would do is I'd be listening for specific areas that are of importance to that person, but with a view to looking, what are the themes that come through? What are the things that they want? And they tend to identify it into actually 4 buckets. What do I want? What do I don't want? And what is it I want to do? And how do I want to show up? And those are the big 4 buckets that they would come under. And then I would listen to that, pull out the themes, reflect them back, and check and see how close I got.
Right.
Then I introduced a new piece of technology to the work, which was this little guy. And that is just record it. It was then easier because then I could actually send it to the person and say, hey, take your time, and why don't you listen to it and look for themes?
Right.
And what we can now do is more closely in real time, we can actually have AI listen to those things and come up with themes.
And now we have a folder on our computer with those 1,000 pictures.
We do. And it's almost like I've never done this as a dating app, but you could swipe left and swipe right. And when you come up with a picture that you like, just say, hey, this is what I want about it.
Right.
Imagine yourself with a few dozen pictures that you've selected.
I have probably, I don't know, I'll describe them for you as quickly as I can here. Yeah. I know there's a picture of there that I've selected that is a cross. And for those who listen, they know that I'm a Christian, and a big part of my life is having the best impact I can for the kingdom and showing up in a way that I know would honor Christ's legacy. There's another picture of a family, because I've always wanted to have a family. And so that's something that Joey and I are intently planning out. Just think of one of the pictures. I think of Michael Jackson, one of his videos where he had like a bunch of people that were all of different races and nationalities, ethnic origin, however you describe it. I see that picture, and the reason why it connects to my future is I want to be surrounded by people with different backgrounds, different cultures, different experiences, different beliefs. I want to have a very diverse future in terms of who I interact with. I know there's a picture in there somewhere of a nice little lake house or a beach house or something like that, because very much inclined to retire as soon as I can so that I can enjoy my retirement years with Joey. That's many years off in the making, but I'm manifesting it to come sooner. If I were to pick out another picture, there's probably, I know there's one in there. It's very similar to the diverse picture of human people, but it's this picture of people would probably have it would still be diversity and showing up in terms of how they might look, but you can tell that they're in need. And the reason for that is because I want to have an impact. I want to help others that are in need. I've always wanted to go on a couple of mission trips and help others build churches, schools, orphanages, whatever it might be. I have to be careful though, because I might want to bring everybody home with me because I just want to help people so much. Another picture is probably of somebody standing up on a stage. And the reason for that is I want to share my life story so that it might help other people resonate. And that can be in a lot of ways. It can be professionally and personally. Share what I've done personally, because I don't like to be a knowledge gatekeeper. I like to be able to share what I've learned and see if others might be able to experience it also or learn from it. And then the same thing on the personal side. There's a testimony that I've been given the blessing to have lived, even though some of it may have been challenging. And if it can help another person, then there's a compelling part of me that feels like I need to share it. The other part is a picture of me and like my husband and friends, or I can see like a couples group hanging out, having a good time, whatever it might be that they're doing. But I envision that for my future, that we have this really cool group of friends that we're able to do things with. And then there's probably several pictures of a couple that's either hiking or they're traveling somewhere or they're redoing something on their house. But it's these different collections of photos that describe a couple enjoying life and enjoying each other.
Great.
So that would be the summation.
So first of all, congratulations on your imagination. And for those of you who at this point are going, I could never do what Cole just did, that's probably at least half the population. So that's why we use some other tools like physical pictures or images on a computer and this, that, and the other. So that would be the first thing, is we'd have you collect all that. We'd summarize it. I didn't make notes of what those themes were, but you've got a pretty good, rich, compelling picture. And we'd summarize that. And then I'd say to you, okay, if all these things happen, let's assume that you could magically make them all happen. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is it couldn't possibly be better, and 1 is I don't even want to think about it, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would it be?
Probably a 9. If I were able to accomplish all of those things, I'd be on a 9 or a 10.
So if it's a 9 or a 10, I would probably leave it at that point. But if it's anything lower, I'd say to the individual, what else would you add in that would move the needle up closer to 10? And that's actually when some of the non-conscious stuff tends to start coming out. When I really want to go and spend time with Aunt Mary because she's only going to be around for another 3 or 4 years. Oh, forgotten that. So there tends to be a little more detail-oriented. Those things might just nudge it up a slight bit. So that would be my next set of questions.
I think it's I think for our BrainWise friends, what we've done today is we've painted kind of a picture of the transition map. And if you feel stuck or you feel uncertain or you feel like you're in the wilderness, then this next series is certainly going to be for you, because we painted a picture of this transition map of what it looks like to help yourself get unstuck or feel uncertain. And then we went through the Ikigai to identify where your sweet spot is. And then we also did your vision or pictures of the future activity, which you could probably go on ChatGPT, quite honestly, Phil, and say, give me 100 photos that might describe someone's future. And ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever will produce a bunch of photos for you to look at. Do what I just did, but using the actual pictures, and describe why you selected them, because then that's what will give you your theme. And then stay tuned, because we'll go to the next part on our next episode of My BrainWise Coach on, now that we've identified those pieces, what happens next? So we're leaving a little cliffhanger for them, Phil.
And I want to just word of caution. With the way our brains work, there will be a number of people now have gone, oh yeah, but I could never do what he did. Or, oh yeah, but I could never achieve what, oh yeah, but. So our brains have this ability to do this yeah, but. And so if you find yourself doing that as one of our listeners, capture those yeah, but thoughts, because we'll come back and work with those in the future. Those are great fodder for a conversation, those yeah, but thoughts. So that's number 1 caution. Number 2 caution, there's a lot of people who will tend to be thinking, oh yeah, but that's going to be too big a change for me, and or it's not even feasible. So if you find yourself doing that, again, capture those moments. And to develop that sort of thinking that Cole just did, why do you think you'd have to change drastically? And what do you think the infeasibility would be for you? Because again, those could be powerful parts of our discussion moving forward.
Absolutely. And if you feel comfortable, send them to us at questions@mybrainwisecoach.com, because we'd be happy to talk through it with you or share resources. And then if you're going along this journey with us and you do these exercises, put them in the comment section. And maybe if you feel comfortable, describe what you believe your Ikigai to be, or describe what you believe your future themes to be based off of. And it'll look different for you than it is for me, because we're all different people with different goals, dreams, aspirations, and desires. So with that, I think that kind of concludes our episode today, where are you feeling stuck, or are you feeling like you may be in a place of transition or change? And what do I do to be able to move forward? So we've given you your reflection, which is to think about what is your sweet spot following the Ikigai kind of methodology, and then what might you want your future to look like by going through the pictures activity or picture selection exercise. Take some moments, share with us what your findings are if you feel comfortable, because we'd love to hear from you. And as always, comment, share, and subscribe to our podcast. Leave us a review, send it to your friends and family so that they too can begin to understand their brains and make decisions that they might want to for their future. And with that, we'll talk to you next week. Stay curious, stay compassionate, and always stay brainwise.